Hi, Austin Davis here with TrustMyMechanic.com, and today a little different. No car repair stuff. We're talking about four-wheel ATVs, and this is my my beautiful Arctic Cat 2004 4000 four-wheel drive. It's a 400 FIS, which stands for full independent suspension. So if you order any parts for it, you're going to need to know that. If you have 4 axles and 4 shocks, you have independent suspension, full independent suspension. So just a little tip. So I'm here today with my good buddy Jason Took with SpinningWrenches.com, and I'm going to put his information in the link that I'm going to put on the video. So I'll give you all his contact information. Jason's my go-to guy for any ATV, four-wheelers, motorcycles, stuff like that. We're just north of Houston in Magnolia, Texas. So the reason why I'm here is this beautiful machine that probably should have been put out to pasture lost sparks. There was no spark to the spark plugs. So I spent a little time trying to check it out myself. I checked the ignition coil, checked the spark plug, checked the wires, checked the fuses, and then anything other than that, it goes to Jason. So Jason tore it down for me and said, hey, you need a new flywheel. And what happens with the old Arctic Cat flywheel, and incidentally this engine is made by Suzuki, and a lot of the Arctic Cat stuff prior to 2010 can be a hodgepodge of Yamaha, Kawasaki, Suzuki, Yamaha, so you really don't know what you got. In this case, this is a Suzuki engine, but your flywheel is probably the same. These weights go along the inside of the flywheel, and they're just glued on. And the weights have thrown themselves off. Well, the weights around this flywheel go over this stator, and this is what produces the electricity. As the flywheel spins around this stator, and that's what gives you spark, or helps produce spark, and charges the battery. So what happened was the flywheel weights came off, and you've probably read other forums. If you're watching this video, you've read that this is what happens. So you need a new flywheel. Well, that's a given. The flywheel here is pressed on, so the weights are actually made into the flywheel. If you can see that, this flywheel is $500. So let's start adding up some prices here. So you're going to have the flywheel. The flywheel weights came off, and what happened then, Jason?
They contact the stator and actually will damage it to where it does not create the spark, will not charge the battery, and causes you to have to buy a new stator.
Flywheel, now stator. This was $225 aftermarket. The Arctic Cat stator is $500. But you can look, I'll give you name and information where you can buy it, or you can call Jason, he can order one for you possibly. You're also going to need side cover gaskets. There's another $30. So we're already up to $500 just in parts. Plus, if you're going to try to do this yourself, Jason, what's this?
This is a flywheel puller.
Did you have one?
Specialty tool. No, I did not have this one. I had to buy this one. It's pretty expensive.
That was like 20 bucks or something, huh?
Yeah, right.
$110
yes,
was your cost.
My cost.
So if you're going to try to do this repair at home, you're going to need this as well. So what else happens here? So we got to put the stator back in.
Well, first we got to install the new flywheel.
Okay.
Okay, and when we check to see, we put the cover on, tried to check for spark again, hoping that it did not take out the stator,
right,
because it is another couple $100 more. Unfortunately, it did wipe out the stator, so therefore we had to buy a stator as well. Obviously, we have not installed the new one. We've got the cover off. We got to remove the old one, install the new one, and we're going to reinstall the new cover gasket and put everything back together, and hopefully we'll be good to go.
So anybody trying to do this at home, how long would it take the average guy to take this cover off to get to this point? Just 2 hours? 4 hours?
You know, you ain't going to quite spend that much time, depending on how old and rusty your machine is, how the rest of those.
Oh, come on, you're not telling me my machine's old and rusty, huh, Jason?
You can see the footrest and everything is out of the way in order to access this cover. You have to unplug it from the other side of the machine in order to even get this cover off because the wire is so short. And inside here you can see these few bearings and these other machine areas. They're like a press type fit on these shafts, and they're really tough to get off. You got to be very careful when you go to pull this off. A lot of these gears are going to try and come off with it. So you're going to want to try and be very slow and careful while you're pulling this, because these parts will just fall right off. And if you don't know what you're doing, you won't get them back in there right.
Right. So you ought to mark them, and I see you got a little bit of markings on these, so you know where we are. Also, just a note too, if you just visually inspect this stator, there's nothing wrong with it. There's no massive damage or anything that I can see. Is that correct?
A lot of times what happens is that magnet, what it'll do is it'll contact and it'll short it out. It'll send an electrical surge through the system and it'll fry. Right. It shorts it out.
So you might be doing this job twice if you just looked at it and said, I think it's okay. If you don't have any way of really testing it and you slap it back together, you're going to probably end up pulling it back off because internally this stator motor has been damaged.
There's factory specs that you can check this with an ohm meter. But if you go to check this and your flywheel weights are off, you're obviously not going to get a true reading.
Right.
So we tried to save the extra couple $100, put the cover back on, check for spark, and then check ohms through this stator plug again, and they were nowhere in spec.
Yeah.
So,
and what all I've read on the internet is that you're probably doing the same research. 99% of the time, even when I called Arctic Cat, they said you're probably going to need it, and you're probably going to need it, just like us. Now there is a big question mark. We put the stator in. There still could be a problem
with a CDI. A lot of times, what will happen when a stator fails, and this happens quite often, when a stator fails, it sends that electrical surge also through into the CDI, and it wipes out the CDI. Okay, so there's a possibility we may end up needing a CDI.
That's central direct ignition.
Sounds good to me.
Okay, yeah, I think that.
What we're doing here is trying to save you as much money as we can,
so
and instead of just selling you a stator, a CDI, and a flywheel, we tried the flywheel first, hoping we didn't need a stator, but unfortunately we do need a stator. Right. Now we're going to install this new stator. Hopefully we do not need a CDI. The CDI is up underneath, which is a lot easier to get to. You won't have to pull this cover back off. Simply just a plug and play, but anytime you want to unplug any electrical components, you want to disconnect the battery before you plug and unplug any new ones.
I think the CDI was another 150, somewhere around there.
Yeah, that's a real good price then.
Yeah, is it? Okay, maybe I got my numbers wrong here, but what I wanted to show you is if your machine maybe is in this kind of condition, I think we paid $2,000 for this 5 years ago, and this repair is going to be over $1,000 by the time we get parts and labor, and we're still waiting. We had to wait and special order these parts from Arctic Cat. I'll put the phone number down to some guys plus Jason so you can get to you, but you know, if you're in this position, you might want to think twice about doing this. I probably should have just bought another one. Jason, you got anything else to add? Man, I appreciate your time.
No, other than being real careful when you pull this cover off, because that actually happened to us the first time. And luckily, I'm mechanically inclined. I was able to just sit there and put it all back together.
Right. Yeah, I wouldn't want to pull those
the factory manual does not tell you exactly how to put all that back together.
Yeah.
You know, the pictures in the factory manual were not very explanatory.
I can imagine.
If you're not mechanically inclined, I would think tell us about doing it yourself.
Yeah. I don't know if I would try this myself. I'm going to put the links in the video. Click the link. Come over to the site. I'll give you all the information you need. Jason, thanks a lot, man.
No problem.
Put it back together for us. We want to go ride.
Yeah,
Austin Davis, Trust My Mechanic. See ya.
Thank you.